Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada ki Jai. Share screen. I can share screen. Yes. Thank you all for joining. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Oh, last week, did we read last week? We did. And we were reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, volume 3. Small volume, but a lot of things happening. This is the San Francisco phase, where the chapter entitled Swami Invites the Hippies. And in that chapter, His Holiness Satswarup Das Goswami Maharaj says that without even Srila Prabhupada lifting a finger, there were devotees, there were people chanting Hare Krishna without him putting much effort. So what the struggles and the energy that he put out in, in New York, the word is taranga. The waves were rippling and causing effects all over the place, but it also got expanded to San Francisco. And Srila Prabhupada finally arrived in San Francisco, and we were reading the descriptions of that big mantra rock dance festival, for which was the highlight that Mukunda Prabhu wanted Srila Prabhupada to attend. And there everyone joined, actually. Hayagriva, Mukunda Prabhu, Ranachor, who was even Srila Prabhupada's personal assistant in this journey to San Francisco. They were all there, and many, Allen Ginsberg, Harvey Cohen, Sam, all these devotees, initial associates of Srila Prabhupada, they all joined Prabhupada in San Francisco. Some were already there, like Mukunda Prabhu and Harvey Cohen. They were already there setting up the
Janvi Mataji.
Yes, Janaki Mataji also. So here Srila Prabhupada was there. And Srila Prabhupada was also focusing on translation of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And Rameswar Prabhu kindly explained to us how his first commentary on Bhagavad Gita mysteriously disappeared. It was not mysterious, like, but somehow during the commute and during the movement, because he had to come all the way to South India, Chennai, right, from Madras, right?
Yes, Chennai, Madras.
Chennai, yes, to get the manuscripts printed, and it didn't happen. And with that, it got lost And here Srila Prabhupada, yes, early he would raise, after 1 hour of chanting, he would turn to his writing. So it had been past about 2 years since he published any book. He had only those 3 volumes of the that comprise the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is what, and he's been translating day in and day out, especially in the nights. Through the nights, he would translate, and by the mercy of the Lord and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Hayagriva Prabhu, who was the English professor, he started typing the manuscripts, but nothing had come to print. The only thing that came, of course, Srila Prabhupada didn't stop him. The Back to Godhead magazine was revived, and they had one successfully printed the first issue. And he said every month you have to somehow or the other print an issue. This is the standard that was set. But neither the Bhagavad Gita or Chaitanya Charitamrita or Srimad Bhagavatam, none of the commentaries or books were being published, personally written, commented by Srila Prabhupada. And also on the other end, none of his followers also seemed to be inclined in taking up the typing or editing or dealing with the Americans, because when Srila Prabhupada tried to print out, he was told that the way the Americans dealt with publishing book was quite different. So things wouldn't work the way Srila Prabhupada thought. And for the first 3 volumes of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we know how personally he was involved in every step of the printing of the book. And here he was yet to begin something like that. Now, so last week we were going through detailed description of that rock festival, which Srila Prabhupada was invited for. It was at the Avalon Ballroom, and a lot of famous rock band stars and groups were there, and they were all waiting for Srila Prabhupada to open the show. The deal was this, that all these groups would play, and they agreed to appear with Swami Bhaktivedanta for a minimum wage of $250 per group. And Allen Ginsberg was also ready for all of this. Yes, there was also a multimedia show which was then famous. Lights and films and slideshows that would have this effect inside the hall. And Mukunda Prabhu gave many slides or pictures of Krishna to be projected.
Displayed.
Display. There were 2 people who were famous in the business, and they were also ready to do their work. This is where we stopped. Yeah, there were tickets that was being sold for $2.50. Yeah, and a lot of people. Mukunda Prabhu was at the gate collecting the money and giving the tickets. There were so many. Warm-up kirtan was already going on when Srila Prabhupada showed up, and slowly he walked. The crowd split into 2, and Srila Prabhupada walked through the center. So this was after 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. So around 10 o'clock is when Srila Prabhupada walked up along with Kirtanananda and Ranachor Prabhu. Let's see. And as soon as he entered, pictures of Krishna and Krishna's pastimes were being flashed onto the wall. Prabhupada walked through the crowd and everyone was applauding and cheered. We have to keep this in mind, because the crowd was cheering for this personality who had come from India. And let's the contrast of this exact moment reflects on the very next day. Anyways, this is where we are. Yes. So we shall quickly recite the pranam mantras and begin reading. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Om
Krishna.
Ajnanandhya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumitam Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pungum Langayate Girim Yadkripat Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Shri Chaitanyam Ishwaram Paramanandamad Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapadamam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Savana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Tavadutam Parijanathaitam Vishnu Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakamitam Shri Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Dutye Vancha Kalpataruksha Kripa Sindhuvya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Guru Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Vaishnav Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Reading from Srila
Jai.
Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 3, Chapter 1, entitled The Swami Invites the Hippies, or as you can see on the screen that's being shared, Part 1, Chapter 22. At 10 o'clock, Prabhupada, excuse me. At 10 o'clock, Prabhupada walked up the stairs of the Avalon, followed by Kirtanananda and Ranachor. As he entered the ballroom, devotees blew conch shells. Some began a drum roll, and the crowd parted down the center, all the way from the entrance to the stage, opening a path for him to walk. With his head held high, Prabhupada seemed to float by as he walked through the stage milieu, making his way across the ballroom floor to the stage. Suddenly, the light show changed. Pictures of Krishna and his pastimes flashed onto the wall. Krishna with Arjuna riding together on Arjuna's chariot, Krishna eating butter, Krishna subduing the whirlwind demon, Krishna playing the flute. As Prabhupada walked through the crowd, everyone stood, applauding and cheering. He climbed the stairs and seated himself softly on a waiting cushion. The crowd quieted. Looking over at Allen Ginsberg, Prabhupada said, "You can speak something about the mantra." Alan began to tell of his understanding and experience with the Hare Krishna mantra. He told how Swamiji had opened a storefront on 2nd Avenue and had chanted Krishna in Tompkins Square Park. And he invited everyone to the Frederick Street Temple. "I especially recommend the early morning kirtanas," he said, "for those who, coming down from LSD, want to stabilize their consciousness on re-entry." We can see the way this man is. He is as he is. He never changed his ways, even after associating, at least to a greater extent than so many other celebrities or whoever was famous at that point. Srila Prabhupada had a good communication with this man, but he never changed his ways. He was a great advocate for any intoxicant. And Srila Prabhupada previously has said, we don't need anything of that sort. Nothing is required to stay high. But this man was a big advocate of LSD. And that's what he's saying also. But Srila Prabhupada, imagine hearing about the Hare Krishna mantra or the holy names of the Lord, telling that you can do this chanting if you want to come down from your intoxicated high level. Back to normal platform. And Srila Prabhupada didn't say anything. He took advantage of this man's position. He took advantage of this man's fame. And previously also we had said, just go on chanting Hare Krishna. This is all that he said. Prabhupada never imposed on this man to change his ways or change his ideologies or change his practices. All that Srila Prabhupada said was to keep chanting, taking Krishna's names. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Here we are. Prabhupada spoke, giving a brief history of the mantra. He then looked over Alan again. You may chant. Prabhupada didn't take over. He just took advantage of Alan being there. Alan began playing his harmonium and chanting into the microphone, singing the tune that he had brought from India. Previously, we have come to this, even when His Holiness Satsurav Das Goswami Maharaj was giving an account of the first meeting of Allen Ginsberg and Prabhupada. There was this conflict of Alan not being able to accept the way Srila Prabhupada chanted or sang the Hare Krishna mantra. And also just prior to this, just maybe a few paragraphs before this, he wanted to change the tune. He couldn't accept, even after all that acquaintance with Prabhupada, he couldn't accept the tune. So he asked Prabhupada, what if your tune can be changed? Then, we can sing a tune that can be more acceptable or palatable to the Westerners. Prabhupada said, the tune doesn't matter, it's the mantra. I will go back and I will definitely refer, because this is something that we have to accept.
Melody is not required.
Melody is not important. What is important is that you will chant Hare Krishna. It can be in the tune of your own country. That doesn't matter. Melody is not important. What is important is that you will chant Hare Krishna. So it is about making everyone chant Hare Krishna. So here, I think even Prabhupada took that small, hint. He took the hint and he said, okay, you only chant. Alan began playing, and the audience, gradually more and more people in the audience caught on and began chanting. As the Kirtana continued and the audience got increasingly enthusiastic, musicians from various bands came on stage and to join in. Ranchor, a fair drummer, Ranchor is Prabhupada's PA, at this point, began playing Moby Grape's drums. Some of the bass and other guitar players joined in as the devotees and a large group of hippies mounted on the stage. The multicolored oil slicks pulsed and the balls bounced back and forth to the beat of the mantra, now projected onto the wall. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
I think spread throughout the hall. Some of the hippies got to their feet, held hands and danced. So maybe we can imagine, because it's somehow seated. It is a hall, and now that they're specifically, Maharaj is saying that they got onto their feet, so it is an auditorium with some sort of seating. Anyways, Allen Ginsberg, we sang Hare Krishna all evening. It was absolutely great, an open thing. It was the height of the Haight-Ashbury spiritual enthusiasm. It was the first time that there had been a music scene in San Francisco where everybody could be a part of it and participate. Everybody could sing and dance rather than listen to other people sing and dance. This is the main catch, trump card of the Hare Krishna mantra, that everyone can participate. Everyone can sing and dance, and everyone is a part of the music. No one is just performing an audience. There's nothing of that. Janaki, Mataji's account. People didn't know what they're chanting for, but to see that many people chanting, even though most of them were intoxicated, made Swamiji very happy. He loved to see the people chanting. Hayagriva. Standing in front of the bands, I could hardly hear, but above all, I could make out the chanting of Hare Krishna building steadily. On the wall behind, a slide projected a huge picture of Krishna in a golden helmet with a peacock feather, a flute in his hand. Then Prabhupada stood up, lifted his arms and began to dance. He gestured for everyone to join him. And those who were still seated stood up and began dancing and chanting and swaying back and forth, following Prabhupada's gentle dance. Roger Stegel. The ballroom appeared as if it was a human field of wheat blowing in the wind. It produced a calm feeling in contrast to the Avalon ballroom atmosphere of gyrating energies. The chanting of Hare Krishna continued for over an hour, and finally everyone was jumping and yelling, even crying and shouting. Someone placed the microphone before Prabhupada, and his voice resounded strongly over the powerful sound system. The tempo quickened. Srila Prabhupada was perspiring profusely. Kirtanananda insisted that the kirtan stop. Swamiji was too old for this, he said. It might be harmful. Because Kirtanananda saw how sick Srila Prabhupada got previously, and it it that's when it finally hit him that this is an old person, aged person. So he was quite scared for Srila Prabhupada's physical health. It might be harmful. But the chanting continued faster and faster until the words of the mantra finally became indistinguishable amidst the amplified music and the chorus of thousands of voices. Then suddenly it ended. All that could be heard was the loud hum of the amplifiers and Prabhupada's voice ringing out, offering obeisances to his spiritual master, Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Prabhupada made his way off stage through the heavy smoke and crowd and down the front stairs with Kirtanananda and Ranchor close behind him. Alan announced the next rock group. Swamiji left the ballroom and the appreciative crowd behind him. He commented, this is no place for a brahmachari. This is no place for a brahmachari. But he accepted it. And we'll see there is this commentary, small comments by Srila Tatsarup Das Goswami Maharaj, and you'll get to know what is the contrast. So this is no place for a brahmachari, and as many of his followers and disciples back in New York, they also couldn't agree that this is no place. This is no place for someone like Swamiji, like Prabhupada. A rock band, a rock music concert makes no sense. But yeah, that's what even Prabhupada said ultimately. But he took to that invitation, and the point was that everyone was chanting. This is all Srila Prabhupada cared for. The next morning, the temple was crowded with young people who had seen Swamiji at the Avalon. Most of them had stayed up all night. Prabhupada, the Srila Prabhupada, having followed his usual morning schedule, came down at 7, held kirtan and delivered the morning lecture. From then, the schedule is the same. This is the second part on this planet that he is following that exact same schedule. Nothing had changed. And even if it is a whole another part of the planet, Srila Prabhupada continued to follow the same schedule, be it jet lag or be it a change in the time, do you call that? Time zone. Later that morning, riding to the beach with Kirtanananda and Hayagriva, Swamiji asked how many people had attended last night's kirtan. When they told him how much, he asked how much money they had made, because whatever after paying of the bands, whatever extra profit was made was to go to the Radha Krishna temple, which is the San Francisco storefront that Mukunda Prabhu and others had, painstakingly built. Not build, but, come together to rent a place and make it a temple. They said they weren't sure, but it was approximately $1,500. I don't know how much that would amount to today, but it seemed like a good amount. Half audibly, he chanted in the back seat. Now, please hear this very sweetly, okay? It's very interesting. He chanted in the back seat of the car, looking out the window as quiet and unassuming as a child, with no indication that the night before he had been cheered and applauded by thousands of hippies who had stood back and made a grand aisle for him to walk in triumph across the straw-lit floor amid the thunder of electric basses and pounding drums of the Avalon ballroom. For all the fanfare of the night before, he remained untouched, the same as ever in personal demeanor. He was aloof, innocent, and humble, while at the same time appearing very grave and ancient. As Kirtanananda and Hayagriva were aware, Swamiji was not of this world. They knew that he, unlike them, was always thinking of Krishna. This is the contrast that I was talking about. What was happening? Thousands of people were cheering him, and many of them were anticipating the Swamiji from India. And when he entered and when he was leaving, also, they were all appreciative of his presence and the impact he had. They were all happy. They all chanted. They were all appreciative of his presence, this small, uh, old man. But none of that affected. Just like he walked out of the storefront in 26 Second Avenue, being aloof and detached, the same way, this also didn't affect him. He was appearing very grave and ancient, aloof, innocent, and humble, all at the same time. Swamiji was not of this world. They walked along with him along the broad walk near the ocean with the cool breezes and cresting waves. Kirtanananda spread the chadar over Prabhupada's shoulders. In Bengali, there is one nice verse, Prabhupada remarked, breaking his silence. I remember, what is that voice across the sea calling, come here, come here? That is the verse. Speaking little, he walked the broad walk with his two friends, frequently looking out at the sea and sky. As he walked softly, he softly sang a mantra that Kirtanananda and Hayagriva had never heard before. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana Hari, Govinda Jaya Jaya. He sang slowly in a deep voice as they walked along the broad walk. He looked out at the Pacific Ocean. Because it is great, it is tranquil. Because the ocean is great, it is tranquil. The ocean seems to be eternal, Hayagriva ventured. No, Prabhupada replied, nothing in this material world is eternal. Bam. Punch. Nothing in this material world is eternal. What did Srila Prabhupada say? Because it is great, it is tranquil. That's all. That is the nature of the ocean, to be tranquil. Again and again, over and over, waves would hit, and it is so great that nothing, you cannot compare the ocean to anything else. Everything else seems small. But when Hayagriva Prabhu said that it seems to be eternal, Prabhupada said, no, nothing is eternal in this material world. Hare Krishna. Shall we continue reading, or what do you want?
Yes, please. Yeah, more time.
In New York, since there were so few women present at the temple, people had inquired whether it were possible for women to join the Krishna consciousness movement. We have had reporters asking this question multiple times. But in San Francisco, that question never arose. Most of the men who came to learn from Swamiji came with their girlfriends. To Prabhupada, these boys and girls, eager for chanting and hearing about Krishna, were like sparks of faith to be fanned into steady, blazing fires of devotional life. There is no question of his asking the newcomers to give up their girlfriends or boyfriends, and yet he uncompromisingly preached no illicit sex. The dilemma, however, seemed to have an obvious solution. Marry the couples in Krishna consciousness. An obvious solution, marry the couples in Krishna consciousness. And that is what he did with the first marriage also, isn't it? Because traditionally a sannyasi would never arrange or perform marriages. By Indian standards, someone might criticize Prabhupada for allowing any mingling of the sexes. But Prabhupada gave priority to what? Spreading Krishna consciousness. What Indian, however critical, had ever tried to transplant the essence of India's spiritual culture into the Western culture? Which Indian? No Indian. Ever before. Prabhupada saw to change the American social system and completely separate the men from the women would not be possible. The so-called culture that was ingrained into the American society was as such. But to compromise the standard of no illicit sex was also not possible. Therefore, Krishna conscious married life, Vigrahastha Ashrama would be the best arrangement for many of his new aspiring disciples. In Krishna consciousness, husband and wife could live together and help one another in spiritual progress. It was an authorized arrangement for allowing a man and woman to associate. If, as spiritual master, he found it necessary to perform marriages himself, he would do it. But first, these young couples would have to become attracted to Krishna consciousness. Then only he could maintain these standards. So, Prabhupada kept that aside, not aside, that was the solution. Srila Prabhupada waited on them to become attracted to Krishna consciousness, waited on them to become attracted to Krishna so that he could teach them to become, to perform devotional service, practice devotional service, and then make them follow the standards. Joanne Campanella had grown up in a wealthy suburb of Portland, Oregon, where her father was a corporate tax attorney. She and her sister had their own sports car and their own boats for sailing on Lake Oswego. Disgusted by the sorority life at the University of Oregon, Joanne had dropped out during her first term and enrolled at Reed College, where she had studied ceramics, weaving, and calligraphy. In 1963, she had moved to San Francisco and become the co-owner of a ceramic shop. Although she had then made many friends among fashionable shopkeepers, folk singers, and dancers, she had remained aloof and introspective. It was through her sister Jan that Joanne had first met Srila Prabhupada. Jan had gone with her boyfriend Michael Grant to live in New York City, where Michael had worked as a music arranger. In 1965, they had met Swamiji while he was living alone on the Bawari, and they had become his initiated disciples Mukunda and Janaki. Swamiji had asked them to get married and had invited Joanne to the wedding. As the wedding guest for one day, Joanne had briefly entered Swamiji's transcendental world at 26 2nd Avenue, and he had kept her busy all day making dough and filling kachori pastries for the wedding feast. We had seen this beautifully how it was portrayed in Abhaycharan. Joanne had worked in one room and Swamiji had worked in the kitchen. Although he had repeatedly come in and guided her in making the kachoris properly, telling her not to touch her clothes or body while cooking and instructing her not to smoke cigarettes because the food was to be offered to Lord Krishna and therefore had to be prepared purely. Joanne had been convinced by this brief association that Swamiji was a great spiritual master or a spiritual teacher, but she had to return to San Francisco without pursuing Krishna consciousness further. A few months later, Mukunda and Janaki had driven to the western coast with plans of going soon to India, but had changed their plans when Mukunda had received a letter from Swamiji asking him to try to start a Krishna conscious temple in California. Mukunda had talked about Swamiji to Joanne and other friends, and he found a lot of young people were interested. Joanne had then accompanied Mukunda, Janaki, and a boy named Roger Sagal to the mountains in the Oregon, where they had visited their mutual friends Sam and Marjorie, who had been living in a forest lookout tower. Mukunda had explained what he had known of Krishna consciousness, and the six of them had begun chanting Hare Krishna together. They had been especially interested in Swamiji's teaching about elevating consciousness without drugs. Mukunda had talked excitedly about Swamiji's having asked him to start a temple in California, and soon he and his wife Janaki, Sam and his girlfriend Marjorie, Roger and Joanne, now intimate friends, had moved to an apartment in San Francisco to find a storefront and set the stage for Swamiji. So this is what that was happening in the background before Srila Prabhupada was invited to San Francisco. How the scene was set in San Francisco. After Swamiji's arrival, Joanne had begun attending the temple kirtana. She felt drawn to Swamiji and the chanting, and she especially liked the informal visiting hours. Swamiji would sit in his rocking chair with his hand in his bead bag, chanting the holy names, and Joanne would sit fascinated watching his fingers move within the bag. One day during Swamiji's visiting hours, while Swamiji was sitting in his rocking chair and Joanne and others were sitting at his feet, Janaki's cat crept in through the hallway door and began slowly coming down the hallway. The cat came closer and closer and slowly mm, meandered right in front of Swamiji's feet. It sat down looking intently at Swamiji and began to meow. None of the devotees knew what to expect. Swamiji began gently stroking the back of the cat with his foot, saying, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Are you feeding him prasadam milk? Joanne, I was touched by Swamiji's activities and his kindness, even to cats, and I longed for more association with him. Joanne came to understand that serving Swamiji was a serious matter, but she didn't want to jump into initiation until she was 100% sure about it, as one should be. Sometimes she would cry in ecstasy, sometimes she would fall asleep during Swamiji's lecture, so she remained hesitant and skeptical, wondering, how can I actually apply Swamiji's teaching to my life? One evening, Swamiji asked her, when are you going to be initiated? Joanne said that she didn't know, but she relished reading his books and chanting Hare Krishna. She said that because she was attracted to the mountains and to elevated spiritual consciousness, she wanted to travel to Tibet. Swamiji, sitting on in his rocking chair, looked down at Joanne. She sat at his feet. She felt he was looking right through her. I can take you to a higher place than Tibet, he said. Just see. Joanne suddenly felt that Swamiji knew everything about her. And she understood, oh, I have to see through his eyes what Krishna consciousness is. He was promising that he would take her to some very elevated realm and that she would have to see it. It was then Joanne decided to become Swamiji's disciple. When she told her boyfriend Roger, he was astounded. He and Joanne had been coming to the kirtans and lectures together, but he still had doubts. Maybe it would be good for him and Joanne to get married but not initiated. Joanne, however, was more determined. She explained to Roger that Swamiji hadn't come just to perform marriages. You had to get initiated first. Roger Stegel had grown up in New York. He was following a Hatha Yoga guru, had experimented with psychedelic chemicals, and had traveled in the deep south as a civil rights activist, taking part in freedom marches with the blacks. Large-bodied, sociable, and outgoing, he had lots of friends in San Francisco. At the airport, in a merry mood with the Hyde Ashbury crowd, he had seen Swamiji for the first time and been especially struck by Swamiji's regal bearing and absence of self-consciousness. The concept of reincarnation had always intrigued him, but after attending some of Swamiji's lectures and hearing him explain transmigration of the soul, he felt he had found someone who definitely knew the answer to any question about life after death. One night after attending the program, at the temple, Roger returned to his apartment and sat down on the fire escape to meditate on what Swamiji had said. The world is false, he had said, but it feels real to me. Roger thought, if I pinch my arm, I feel the pain. So how is that illusion? The fire escape is real. Otherwise, I would be falling in space. The space is real, isn't it? Roger decided he didn't understand what Swamiji meant by illusion. If I tried to walk through the wall, he thought, would that be real or not? Maybe the wall's reality is just in my mind. To test the illusion, he went inside his apartment, concentrated his mind, and walked against the wall. Smack. He sat down again and thought, what does Swamiji mean when he says the world is illusion? He decided he should ask at the next meeting. He did, and Swamiji, Srila Prabhupada, told him that actually the world is real because it is created by God, the supreme reality. But it is unreal in the sense that everything material is temporary. When a person takes the temporary world to be permanent and all in all, he is an illusion. Only the spiritual world, Swamiji explained, is eternal and therefore real. Roger was satisfied by Swamiji's answer, but he had other difficulties. He thought Swamiji was too conservative. When Swamiji said that the people's dogs must be kept outside the temple, Roger didn't like it. Many visitors brought their pets, the pet dogs, with them to the temple, and now there was a hitching post in front of the building just to accommodate the pets on leashes. But Swamiji didn't allow pets inside. This philosophy is for humans. He said, a cat or dog cannot understand it. Although if he hears the chanting of Hare Krishna, he can receive a higher birth in the future. Roger also had other points of contention with what he had considered Swamiji's conservative philosophy. Swamiji repeatedly spoke of uncontrolled habits like smoking, but Roger couldn't imagine giving up such things. And he instructed about restricting sex life, especially bothered him. Yet, despite his not following very strictly, Roger felt himself developing a love for Swamiji and Krishna. He sensed that Swamiji had much to teach him and that Swamiji was doing it in a certain way and a certain order. Roger knew that Swamiji saw him as a baby in spiritual life who had to be spoon fed. He knew he had to become submissive and accept whatever Swamiji gave him. Sam Pierstra, tall and slender with curly reddish golden hair, was athletic. He had trained as an Olympic skier, yet artistic. He was a writer and wood sculptor. He had graduated from Reed College in Oregon and had gone on as a Fulbright scholar to a small college in Switzerland, where he had obtained an MA in philosophy. He was popular, as Mukunda saw him, the epitome of the rugged individualist. When Mukunda had visited Sam at his mountain lookout tower and told him about Swamiji and Krishna consciousness, Sam had been intrigued by the new ideas. Sam's life had nearly reached a dead end, but he had seen hope in what Mukunda and Janaki had been saying about Swamiji. After spending only a few days with Mukunda, Sam had been eager to help him establish a temple of Krishna consciousness in San Francisco. Sam was the one who knew the local rock stars and had persuaded them to appear at the Avalon with Swami Bhaktivedanta, whom he had never met. Sam had seen Swamiji for the first time when Swamiji arrived at the San Francisco airport. And Sam had later insisted that he had seen a flash of light come from Swamiji's body. At first, Sam had been afraid to say anything, nor had he known what to say. Prabhupada was completely new to him and seemed so elevated. But the day after the program at the Avalon, when Mukunda told Prabhupada that Sam had arranged the dance, Prabhupada sent for him to find out how much money they had made. Sitting across from Prabhupada, who sat behind his small desk, Sam informed that they had made about $1,500 profit. Well, then, Srila Prabhupada said, you will be the treasurer. Then Srila Prabhupada had asked him, what is your idea of God? God is one, Sam replied. Prabhupada asked, what is the purpose of worshipping God? Sam replied, to become one with God. No, Prabhupada said, you cannot become one with God. God and you are always two different individuals, but you can become one in interest with him. And then he told Sam about Krishna. After they talked, Prabhupada said, you can come up every day and I will teach you how to do books. Keep the accounts. So Sam began meeting with Prabhupada for half an hour a day to learn bookkeeping. Haribol. Sam, I will read here and we'll stop. Sam, I had never been very good at keeping books and I really didn't want to do it. But it was a good excuse to come and see Swamiji every day. He would chew me out when I would spend too much money or when I couldn't keep the balance the books properly. I really loved the idea that he was so practical that he knew bookkeeping. He became so much more of a friend from the beginning rather than some idealized person from another sphere of life. I took almost all my practical questions to him. I learned to answer things for myself based on the way Swamiji always answered day-to-day problems. And the first thing he made me do was to get married to my girlfriend. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Wonderful reading.
Thank you, Rose.
Really nice, really nice. This Sam is Sam Sundar Prabhu, I think.
Let's see. Hare
Nice.
Krishna.
Very nice.
Thank you for all of you for joining. It's always an extreme joy to read
You asked,
Srila
you
Prabhupada
asked,
Leela.
you asked, you asked Anil Prabhu and Mr.
Yes, that's what. Hare Krishna, Anil Prabhu.
Harival,
I hope you're doing well. We missed you for a couple
Yeah,
of weeks.
yeah. The last 10 days were extremely busy for me, and I used to get tired. So the least I used to try to do is keep on chanting. You know, so that's all I tried. And joining any such things was very tough for me. I always try to tell myself, Krishna loves if I do my duty. Guru will love me if I do my duty. So now duty is to the work, attend to the work first, who are depending directly on my services. So I attended to that, but I did do the chanting, and I remembered you and everyone as I was missing the
Thank you,
evening satsang. But today was a pleasure to listen. I decided not to interrupt you at all. Just listen, just focus on what Prabhupada is saying. And I joined little late and missed your lovely singing. But I think it's okay. I will try to make it for it. Yeah. So lovely, you did an excellent job as you always do. And Ramesh Kanai Prabhu is also, was there in this time. Sometimes he's busy in his also busy schedule, but lovely. Very nice meeting you all again and becoming a part of this beautiful satsang, which is a great defense system in this Kali Yuga. Without this association,
Hari.
falling is just as slippery as one may think of walking on a slippery rainy day. So, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Thank you for glorious words. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. Thank you for joining in your busy schedule. We missed your association, and I was wondering where you were. Hare Krishna.
Okay. You're talking to me? I thought
Yes. No,
you are.
Rameswar Prabhu said you were in Saudi for work.
Yeah, I was in Saudi and I was in Bahrain, and mentally I was at so many places interacting with some people in Europe. And all that, the
But now
business
you are
takes
in
you.
Bahrain.
And Saudi and
Now in
Bahrain,
Bahrain, no,
physically
bro?
I had to. Mabruk, Bahrain is okay. Yeah. I had
No, I'm
to
saying
visit.
now presently you are in Bahrain, no, bro?
I'm in Bahrain now, presently in Bahrain.
Yeah. Okay.
And supposed to be visit Jeddah in by the end of this month, and then maybe little Europe here and there. All that this goes on. But the most important is building defense system through satsang is extremely necessary,
Hari.
of paramount importance. Nothing more important than that. As Prabhupada said, more important than chanting is association. Correct? Association is number one. Satsang number one. Number two is chanting. Hari Bol. Hari.
Thank you, bro.
Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hari.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So, yes, Prabhu, tell me. Rameswar Prabhu ki jai.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for your wonderful reading. While you are reading with all of your enthusiasm, you're physically taking us there to the Leela spell. I'm just thinking how this island ballroom with so much of bass guitars, with the drummer. What's his name? You said? This is Newton.
The
That name is not.
Sam.
No. The drummer who is the personal secretary.
Rancho.
Rancho. I never heard about him. I read it, but I don't. Somehow I missed when I read the book. Okay. Very nice.
Rameswar Prabhu, yeah. So here they are building a temple in San Francisco. Let's see what happens.
Mm.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Vaishnav.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare